Good morning and welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 181. Today we're going to talk about dieting mostly. There's like 2 questions related to diets and a little bit about constructing drills for your esport career. Updates. Okay, no updates, I don't think. Yep, not much happened yesterday. So why don't we just jump into the first question, and if things come up, I will bring them up then. Fast intro, you guys. I appreciate you. Appreciate the feedback. I'm trying to keep the intros fast. Let's go. Oh, wait, no, back up. Hold on. I got to intro the show. Cue the music. Hey, my name is Weldon. This is the Ask Weldon Show. I'm a sports psychology trainer, and I work with professional esport athletes, and you can call in questions to this show at anchor.fm/Weldon Green. It's like a podcasting app thing that allows call-ins to my account. So it's pretty smooth. All you got to do is go to anchor.fm/Weldon Green, grab the app, open the app, go to Weldon Green account, just search it in the app, I think, and then you click, message plus audio message, and you just hold the phone up to your ear. It's super smooth, detects that you put the phone up to your head, and it conditions codes, like smooths out your audio, makes you sound pretty radio-like. And like you have a super high quality microphone and not some dinky phone microphone. So that's pretty cool. I like how all the questions sound when people call in here. You can also, of course, just hold your thumb down on the button and just speak at your phone. That works too. And then I get the question and I push play on it here and it's in the show. I get questions related to sports psychology, exercise psychology, dieting, performance, peak performance, esport training, and even League of Legends coaching, since I have done a number of years of high-end League of Legends coaching. Yeah, otherwise, check the show out on Twitch, twitch.tv/MindGamesWeldon, if you want to join us for the pre- and post-show entertainment, where I basically take questions from the audience and we talk about esport and business and life. And now, let's get into the first question of the show. This one is from Abdul.
I wanted to ask you if you know any good drills that I can do in League of Legends in the practice tool or custom games for the basic fundamentals of the game, for example, zoning, trading, spacing, stuff like that, and not those obvious things like CSing, map awareness. Thank you.
Okay, so how do you design drills for practice tool and custom games? Instead of listing off drills, what I wanted to go through was to basically go through the principles and fundamentals of designing drills, because there's a cycle, there's a drill life cycle that exists in sport. The way that it works is somebody invents a drill. Let's call these people like drill creationists, drill creators, drill artisans, as you could say. And they create a drill, and then they start using it with their swimmers, and then or their soccer players or something. And either they popularize it with their friends, or they popularize it with their team, or they use it until they have a victory or they have some sort of success. And then what happens is somebody who used that drill, whether it's the coach that originally created it or the coach that heard about it from a friend and started using it and won something, they get invited to talk. And they get invited to talk about their training routine and how did you win, how did you win that tournament or that trophy, or how did you get a gold medalist at the Olympics, blah, blah, blah. And then they start publishing books and talking about the drills that they use to get there. The drill becomes a canon drill for people in the field and gets disseminated and used, basically. So this is the dissemination kind of routine for drills in most sports. It's through the coach, I would say, like the coach professional development sphere. Books by coaches for coaches, conferences by coaches for coaches, and basically they take successful coaches and they ask them, what did you do? And then they look at drills that way. So essentially, now that the internet is here, just like with all other industries, the medium for drill creation is going to start disappearing. Instead of needing to have success necessarily in the market through the coach and then being kind of like supported and promoted by coaches at all these coaching events and by books and stuff like that, it's probable that in the future you'll be able to find drills on message boards or on marketplaces or on just kind of all over the web in collections or whatever that you can then get reviews on and comments on and feedback from. And the drill creation process will be a lot more democratic, I would say, which means we're going to find a lot more geniuses who can create amazing drills, because the creation of a drill involves the understanding a little bit of the science of learning. And you don't really even need to understand the science. You just need to understand essentially, like experientially, how it is that you learn. Somebody who understands the sport at a deep level, so they're practicing fundamentals and it helps people improve. And somebody with the creativity to come up with the restraints and requirements for the learning to occur. So I recommend to everybody to try a hand and drill creation. It is a craft, I believe, and the more that you do it, the better you get at it. And it's really fun, and it's hard to do wrong. And you also get to kind of like unpack your own learning process as you go along. So that's my little short history on drills and a perspective on where I think drills are going in sport and esport, and a call for you to become a drill creator. All right, so what are some of the fundamentals I consider when I'm creating a drill? Well, first of all, there need to be constraints. In esport, it's pretty hard to get practice modes that are useful in any way. So you have to think of how it is that you're constraining either the focus of your muscle movement or your tactical. Try to divide things into two categories. You have mechanics, which is like the body, and then you have tactics and strategy, which is essentially decision-making trees that you're training. And then of course you have mental drills, which you can just go to mindgames.gg/MAC for your mental training. But anyway, so try to divide your drills into categories and then divide them into subcategories if you can, although try to not make up kind of your own set of obscure categories. Try to create ones that you think are universal to all esport. It's best if you consider esport in general versus just your sport in particular, because people are oftentimes, I see, creating categories and divisions that kind of like segment the body or the mind into spaces that don't actually exist, into separations where there is no separation there, and they need to be treated as a holistic whole, but people are separating them too much. So I would say make sure you think of trans esport when you're creating your kind of like classifications for how it is that you create drills. Okay, so mechanical drills and tactical drills. Tactical drills in League of Legends, at least, since this question from Abdul is about League of Legends specifically, are pretty hard to pull off in the practice tool and in custom games. Strategic and decision-based drills, like things like trading, pretty much you have to do in a live game. It's almost impossible to do them in the practice tool. In the practice tool, you can do basic mechanical things such as CSing. You can do a little bit more advanced mechanical things such as combos. So those are the things that I recommend, is practicing champion combos, specific things like animation canceling, etc. And the other thing that you can practice is mouse location and mouse speed. So you can add the dropping of a dummy to your drill as part of the mouse speed. So you can say, like, okay, you can kick off the drill mentally, and you can immediately try to drop a dummy in the exact location that you want the opponent to be, and then initiate your trade on it through the minions. Or your animation cancel through the minions, so that the dropping of the dummy actually becomes a part of the drill in and of itself, and in working on improving your mouse accuracy and your mouse speed. And you can do things like, punish yourself pretty hard for messing up your mouse accuracy and your mouse speed by restarting the drill instantly. So you can set up practice dummies, and you can work on, CS, and then rapidly move your mouse to the dummy for an auto attack or for something, and you try to click on it directly and exactly, and if you miss the click, like, you mess up the drill and you can't go on to the next step, or you have to redo, right? So you can do a mixture of training your mechanics and your essentially mouse speed and mouse accuracy with dummies in the lane if you're trying to mix it with kind of like minion CSing and stuff like that, or you can do it in the river, whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as you have this kickoff point where you're trying to start your mouse from a random location, or from orb walking, or just kind of like moving around into like combat, essentially. And if you're paying attention to where you click. Okay, and then when you go into the actual game, you're going to be trying to control your drills in terms of giving you controllables for bending the game. Excuse me. Bending the game rules around your whim. So you should first of all not care about what anybody else in the game feels and experiences. So publishers will hate this because you're going to give some people a bad experience by focusing exclusively on one style of playing. And then you're going to want to create rules that punish you a little bit if you mess up the drill, and that cause you to enact the drill no matter what, so that you learn the systems around it. My favorite example of this is the roaming drill that I did on myself with Talon, where I forced myself to roam at level 3 and level 6 for a while. And what that did was improve my laning. People are like, well, how does a roaming drill improve your laning? Well, because I forced myself to do it at level 3. And so no matter what, I had to roam. So if I got chunked in a horrible trade at level 2, and I got chunked to like 25% HP, and then I went and roamed and ran into the jungler and or went to the other lane and initiated a play, I'd usually die. And then I would feed. And then people would be super pissed at me, and the game would get tanked. And so I learned pretty quickly not to take bad trades at level 1 and 2, and to hold out to level 3 until I had the kit that I wanted to essentially either win trades or roam. And I learned to CS carefully. I learned not to take chunk damage. I learned not to take minion damage. All these kind of things from the drill. So you see how the drill itself had a tertiary effect on everything else in the game. I like to construct drills that will be so limiting as to force you to improve other aspects of your gameplay along the way. So trying to create a drill around mid game that actually improves your early game and your late game is a real challenge. But you can do it if you design it well, and all you need to do is like add little extra sentences, tweak little rules, add extra mental barriers, things like that conform and constrain your playing to a specific way in order to craft a perfect drill. Share your drills with me. Come into the Discord. Discord link is below my stream. You can also find it in my YouTube description. And share your drills in the channel associated with that game, please. And let's start spreading League of Legends, Overwatch, CSGO drills all over the place. Thanks for the question, Abdul. All right, question number 2.
Hey Weldon, I'm a pretty big guy, and ever since I can remember, I've always used food as a way to deal with depression, escape from boredom, or even as a reward. How do I change my relationship with food so I see it more as a fuel rather than something that I can escape with? I am 12 years out of high school and 100 pounds heavier, and it's starting to have its physical and mental setbacks. Any psychological insight would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think that you should necessarily change your relationship with fuel in terms of reducing it into a fuel. Sorry, food in terms of reducing it into a fuel, because it's never going to happen. Like, food is an intrinsic part of the human experience, and you're going to have food be a central part of your family now and in the future, a central part of your relationship, a central part of your social structure. It's going to be a central part of everything that you do for the rest of your life, no matter what. And it should be. And it's also probably going to be a center of your aesthetic experience in life, because food can be beautiful, it can be delicious, and it can be eaten in aesthetic locations, and it can be appreciated in a way that kind of unfolds and opens you to wonderful experiences in your life that you will never forget. Some of the best experiences I ever had are around food. No surprise there, since we humans have taken this thing that we kind of have to do, and we've turned it into a culture. Okay, so how do you improve your relationship to food just in general? Well, first of all, I think actually going the other way might help a little bit. Instead of seeing it as, instead of trying to distance yourself from it and become more of a fuel, maybe you should go the other way and try to respect it more and more and more, and try to find the aesthetic within the food. One of the best relationship with food moments that I ever had in my life. By the way, let me caveat this entire conversation by saying I suck at my relationship with food. I am very bad at controlling my impulses, and I often overeat and eat unhealthy food. So I'm not a very good person to comment on diet, but I can comment on my relationship with food in general and how it's shifted throughout the years. Because I used to not be able to eat stuff Like I used to have like all of these pet peeves and food preference problems, et cetera, and I've eliminated all of them psychologically, so that I can pretty much eat anything now, and I have a much deeper kind of appreciation for food in a mindful sense. So here's what happened. I had the typical thing that you have when you grow up, where you have things that you can eat, things that you can't eat, et cetera, and you have textures you like and don't like, and then you just kind of stick with what you have, and you eat it for maybe emotional reasons. Related to my family, related to upbringing, related to what tastes good. Then I went to Japan, and the experience I had was I lived in the countryside in Japan, and I couldn't get Western food. So I had to eat whatever was there, and I couldn't. I lost like 20 pounds. I couldn't eat the Japanese food. So I looked online and I was like, how do you learn to eat new food? Because there's no way that I'm going to get Western food here. It's just not accessible at all. And even if it was, I couldn't even buy it. It wasn't even like I didn't have money to buy the more expensive Western food. It's like it literally was not even there. I was eating at this Indian restaurant like 3 times a week because it was the only food I could actually eat. And I heard this at random advice. I don't know where I got it from, but it was like, hey, if you eat food a certain number of times, like 7 times, you start to crave it. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. I want to crave the food I'm eating. That means I want it and I like it, right? It turns out I've actually had cravings for food that I don't like, so you can do that too. But anyway, so what I did was I tried to force myself to eat food and that I didn't like. And I learned that there's food that I don't like the taste of. There's food that I don't like the texture of. There's different ways of not liking food. So I got to explore that process of what it is that I don't like about food. And some of the texture stuff I never got over. So there's still food that like the texture is like, not really for me, But most of the tastes were related to smell. So you can kind of plug your nose, get through it, and also conditioning. Like, to be perfectly honest, it's just the taste you're used to. So those I was pretty easily able to get through and to eat sequentially or over the course of a month. Whenever they would come up, I just would not avoid them. And sure enough, after 2 years living in Japan, I could eat everything, pretty much exactly everything, except those little eggs on those little salmon eggs that you get on sushi. But then I conquered that a few months ago, I think. I just ate some and I was like, oh yeah, okay. Got really mindful about it. I used new tools related to mindfulness to conquer that, so I'll tell you about that in a second. But anyway, I started craving the foods, and I conquered them, and I had a much more kind of aesthetic relationship with food, because Japan is so into presentation and so into appreciation of food, and because they took it kind of the other way, right? From the direction you're going towards fuel, they took it the other way towards celebration. And everything there is smaller. So because the food is more beautiful and more delicious, you can eat less of it and have the same have the same kind of like aesthetic appreciation. The more that you appreciate a bite of cake, the less cake you need to eat to satiate yourself. So that's kind of the direction I went. And then when I started practicing mindfulness, one of the things that they recommend is mindful eating, which I have done. And I recommend for you that you should go on a complete mindful eating binge. And by that I mean that you should treat your mindfulness journey as a food-related one. And every single meal, once a day, I think that you should start once a day and you should move to every single meal. But once a day, your main meditation practice for the day should be to mindfully eat. And I think that essentially what that means, which you can search on the internet, you can find tons of cool stuff about mindful eating, and you can find tons of guidance, and you can find tons of audio guidance in Tara Brach's website, TARABRACH.com. I think that you will find, you don't need any of my advice on it, but you will find a cult of people, and by cult, I mean in the good sense, a cult of people on the internet who will help you out with mindful eating, and it should become your meditation practice, and you should move and transition into a relationship with food that is based on appreciation and aesthetics that is not based on emotion. Okay, so rebuilding a new relationship with food on the productive side instead of the avoidance side, where you're just trying to see it as fuel and distance yourself from it. I think that is literally the safest and only way out, because you're never going to escape food your whole life. It's just not going to happen. And it's better to turn it into an experience that you can enjoy and appreciate, rather than one that you can just kind of try to avoid and not have touch you. So that's my thoughts. Those are my thoughts, and good luck. Let's go into the third question.
Hello, Weldon. My name is James.
Hi, James.
So, I have this problem in League of Legends where I cannot focus on my cursor during team fights. And this hurts me quite a lot because I cannot play AD carries, because I cannot orb walk, because that would make me just run into their team. I can't play skill shot based champions either because I'll just miss everything. I was wondering if you could help me with this phenomenon or suggest how I can cope with this. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to train yourself out of this, and two of the things I think you should do is slow down your mouse speed. So slow down your cursor speed so that you have to make larger arm movements in order to move the cursor. And I think that you should turn on, you should turn off SmartCast. If you're using SmartCast, you should not do it, so that you can open up a targeting indicator for a skill shot, and you can see it, and you can see from that, based on that, where your mouse is. And don't worry, this is pretty normal that you can't see the cursor, and then eventually you can see the cursor. So just, it's something you have to work on, and it's something that will carry over into other video games as well and make you a better player in other video games and like kind of kick off to a higher rank. So I would recommend working on this. There's a couple things you can do. So this is kind of like in relation to the drill question, right? Here's some drills that I will just randomly make up off the top of my head to help you with this. First of all, I would go into the custom game, and I would put a bunch of dummies around you in a circle, and I would try to like do attack sequences on them while focusing completely on the cursor. So never moving your eyes from your cursor, but seeing all of the dummies. So you're watching where your skill shots go, and you're watching the attacks you do on the dummies. And hopefully you're playing a melee champion, so you're like bouncing around the circle, you know, left and right. And you're always looking at the cursor while you're doing it, okay? So that you're kind of like working on your peripheral, but your focus is on your cursor and your peripheral vision is on the actual combat, okay? Then I would go into skirmishing and team fighting, and I would say now that you've slowed down your DPI or your mouse scroll, I would focus. I think that first of all, holding spacebar down is really useful because you can essentially center your champion on the screen and lock your screen to your champion when you're team fighting, and then your cursor can be bound within a square around that. So I think that that's pretty crucial for team fighting is to like lock your champ, and then make it so that you focus on your. So this is when you get into the in-game decision drills. Focusing on your team or on your cursor at the expense of losing the team fight, at the expense of losing the skirmish, right? So I want you to do the same drill that you did in the practice tool, where you look at your cursor, but you try to peripherally look at what's happening in the team fight, and your focus is always on your cursor. And this is going to cause you to lose team fights and team fight worse, but you're not going to be doing this drill forever. You're just going to be doing this drill to understand like how it is that your cursor moves when you play, until you internalize that pattern. Once you internalize that pattern of how your cursor moves when you play, then you can start to like pay a little bit more attention to the team fight. But this is really an accuracy problem. I think just an accuracy of like actually being able to see your cursor, know where it is, how it moves, and it's kind of like different portions of our body. When let's say you're running and you can't really see yourself running, and then you start running with a mirror, and you're able to finally see your gait, and you're like, oh yeah, like I should improve that. And you can see it and look at it and work on it. You're going to actually improve your cursor movement through this drill. It's actually not only going to improve your ability to see your cursor, it's going to improve like your accuracy and the location of your cursor and where you hold it. Okay, and the second, and then the last stage, the last drill I'll come up with, it's not a stage, I don't know if this will train all the way through or not, but the last thing I would do is I would kind of go back to normal or whatever, but I would add VOD watching of team fights and skirmishes, and watching where your cursor goes and how it moves to your repertoire. So after the game, you go into the VOD, you go to your team fights and your skirmishes, and you watch what your cursor does. Even if you saw it during the thing, you should watch your cursor, because you can train your visual system like outside the brain also, or outside of the game also, sorry, not the brain. And And I think that this is one way that you could train yourself to kind of just like notice the cursor. I think that if people watch streams a lot of times that they'll desensitize the cursor because they're just watching, the champions and they're not watching the person's cursor. And I think that you need to resensitize yourself to it a little bit. So you should watch recorded videotapes of you playing where you're focusing completely on what your cursor is doing. Okay, so those are some drills I invented for you that might help. Hopefully they do. Before we get to the last question, which again, we go back to diet. So here we go, drills, diet, drills, diet. I wanted to promote and recommend my Mac program. This is the mindgames.gg/MAC website, and it is a online video training program that I created, 47 videos to train the same things that I do with pros, but for amateurs. And the things that I do with pros are essentially mental training. So mindfulness-based peak performance enhancement. And the idea with this program is actually to help you develop transferable life skills and social and emotional skills through all-inning on esport. So if you are, or any other performance, any other hobby or performance where you want to dive or drive your passion into, there's a chance that you're wasting your time. Like let's say you're working on Pokemon or something, or you're working on being a better, social studies student or something, or you want to join the business, the math team or the chess club or something, and you want to all in on this hobby, and you want to really focus on developing that craft to a high level and performing at a high level, but it might be useless for the rest of your life. Actually, this is true in a lot of sports too. Lacrosse, for example. You're not necessarily going to use it when you're 45 and you're trying to, have a career and raise your kids. So you're going to spend all this time doing lacrosse instead of focusing on your schooling, et cetera, and the only thing you're going to get out of it is some temporary fitness. Well, that's not true, because there's other things that you can develop in the competitive sector where you are competing and striving to master a performance-based craft. And remember, there's a lot more things that are performance than you think they are. So this can be true of things like chess, where you perform and when you compete, and things like math, where you actually perform when you compete, and you have to enter this very creative mode in order to problem solve, that operate on this like performance-based psychology. So within this competitive atmosphere, climate, I would say, you can work in a certain way towards your craft, in a way that you fold everything else in your life towards that endeavor, and then the motivation and ambition of that endeavor allows you to do other things in your life harder. You want to control your diet, be more serious about your craft. Like I control my diet through my passion about the gym. Like I really want to build my body in a certain way, and I'm really good at fitness, and I really am focused on that. And through that passion, I'm able to improve areas of my life that I don't have much control over, because I roll my ambition over into those things, and it gives me discipline there. So the idea of like transference of this kind of power you have towards your passion, that you can use it and ooze it around to other areas of your life. That's kind of the one key element of this program. Another key element of this program is how to essentially build a mental resilience framework, or build mental resilience on a framework that allows you to transfer that skill set into the next thing you do. So let's say that you want to all in on your craft and you train it intentionally with the MAC approach. It will allow you to be better at the next thing that you tackle, whether it's a relationship, whether it's parenting, whether it's being a son or daughter, whether it's another craft or another sport that you want to pick up, whatever it is, because you tackled it with an intentional process, training process that involved your mind and your mental framework, you're able to transfer it easily over to the next realm. And so you build on your hobbies and your failures and your passions in your life, and you carry them over to the next one. It's kind of like in World of Warcraft when you're leveling up a champion and you're like, ugh, it's so lame that I have to level up this champion and then I don't get anything for my next champion. And then they added these, what are they called? Like heraldics into the game, where you can like earn them and they're not bound to you, and you can trade them off to your Smurf. And all of a sudden people were like, yay, something that I can use to like benefit my other champions when I'm playing this champion. Feels so good. So all of a sudden, playing the one champion was not a waste of time. Your main champion wasn't a waste of time, because you get these cool, historic items. What are they called? Antiques? Ugh, I forget the name. Anyway, that you could trade to your Smurf or to your other champion that you would earn on your main one. So all of the grind that you did before became like worthwhile. So I think that that kind of feeling is what you're going for when you're training your sport or your passion or your esport with a mental framework, like the mindfulness acceptance commitment framework. Okay. You can get it at mindgames.gg/MAC. Use the code AskWeldon to make sure that you show that you come from YouTube and or Twitch. Hi, Twitch. And understand that the price is something there that I instituted. This is the third version, and I've tested pricing all sorts of ways, all over the place. Way more expensive, way cheaper. And I found out that people actually don't do the program when it's free. That people are more able to keep their attention on the program when it's something that they have to sacrifice a little bit for. But it's not meant to be a barrier, so if it is a barrier, if cost is a barrier for you, make sure to message me and we can figure out something independently. But there's a satisfaction guarantee in this program, meaning that as long as you want a refund, you will get a refund, and it's also a lifetime purchase. So you buy it once, you get in, you're in it forever. No matter how many times I upgrade the program, you will just be grandfathered in, and that is that. Okay. Let's jump into the last question, everybody.
Hey Weldon, my name is Patrick. I have a question regarding health and nutrition.
Awesome,
I
Patrick.
remember a while back in a video of yours, I heard you say that you should periodically cycle yourself off of vitamins so your body doesn't become lazy and pull less vitamins out of food you consume. My question is, how long should this on and off cycle be? For context, I'm a casual gym goer and have an interest in nutrition. I have some multivitamin gummies that I take in the morning for the past 2 weeks. Cycling off of vitamins was something I never considered before, so I was wondering if you could elaborate on that more. Thanks, Weldon.
Okay, so let me back up and frame the question. So Patrick is asking about talking about cycling off of supplements. So I'm going to change vitamins in Patrick's question to supplements, because that's what I was actually talking about. And I don't know if I said vitamins back in the thing, but I think that I was talking about supplements in general. So supplements include things that your body produces, like creatine and protein and other things that you're adding in addition to it, calcium. That your body can calcium is not in there. They include things that your body can construct in and of itself out of food that it eats, and also things that your body cannot and must abstract from food, such as vitamins, which are vitamins because your body doesn't make them. You have to get them. So there is no. I've recently looked at a little bit at the research around tolerance to vitamins, and because of this question, and I couldn't really find anything that's looked at it. So my advice came from the supplementation field around things like protein and creatine, where there's this recommendation that you essentially that the body is like sensitized to a certain thing, and that when you start taking it for a while, like the instant effect of the dosage wears off, and then you should like stop and desensitize your body to it and restart it. This is kind of like an old wives kind of thing. But given the lack of information that we have about the gut and the gut flora and fauna and the digestive tract and the digestive system, and the way that our body uptakes certain minerals and substances and vitamins and proteins, it isn't a bad idea to think about cycling off of certain supplementations. Now, this doesn't apply to, like, there's many vitamins that we do know that essentially don't have a lot of cofactors and that will be, uptaked regularly, and we can see that they are uptaked regularly, and that basically that is something that is sustained. So I'm not sure that this applies so much to certain vitamins like vitamin C or other vitamins that you literally can just like absorb and sorry, it's the morning here, in case you didn't know. And there's so many different things that you can put in your mouth. There's zero way for me to give a good, safe, healthy answer about this. So I'm going to give a generic, generalized answer, and that is cycle off of everything that isn't food in your life in order to make sure that you're controlling the intake of that and that it's not having any impact on your body, because you can observe when you're on and when you're off, and you can observe the consequences of those moves for health reasons for your own sake. Do not do this for things that your doctor has told you that you need to stay on, and do not do this for things that are essential For example, if you're pregnant, you need to dose on calcium and iron pretty regularly. Iron really only if your blood hemoglobin is low, but calcium you should absolutely. Calcium and vitamin D shouldn't be something you cycle off of every few weeks when you're pregnant. Like, you should be dosing it for the whole entire time, period. You don't want to... Babies are little vampires, guys. They grow in your body, and they basically suck your blood, and they only care about their own survival, same as us. And so they'll do anything, including like sucking things away from the mother's body and causing it to die in order to keep itself alive. So they dismantle your wife or your spouse's, or if you're a female, your bones in order to construct their own skeleton. And so you need to make sure that you have a lot of calcium and vitamin D in order to absorb the calcium in your body, in order to make sure that your bones just aren't sucked dry. Your bones are a lattice work that holds calcium, okay? So they aren't like made of some like dense thing and they're just like getting chipped away. It's like they're like a structure, and they have more or less density of calcium in them. So you get it leached out of you essentially by when you construct a baby full of its own bones. It takes a lot of calcium to do that. So yeah, anyway, make sure you supplement. Please. I don't want you breaking your hip when you're 50 and then being pissed at me. All right, so one of the most important things to think about for vitamin supplementation is cofactors. That there's certain things that you can't, that you will take vitamins and they will work right away really amazingly because you have a cofactor present in your body that is allowing them to be absorbed. And then it'll like chip away at that surplus of that cofactor until it's gone, and then all of a sudden the vitamin will stop kind of working or something because the thing that it was operating with or operating because of is gone. And so I like to think of cycling vitamins for two reasons, for my own purposes, because when I cycle vitamins, I like to think that I'm like going back to food and kind of like just building up the cofactors normally that I would get through food, and not kind of like accidentally using them up because I'm dosing on vitamins of different kinds. Just in case like there are cofactorial relationships that we don't understand yet that might impact like, for example, if there's a cofactor that I'm using up by taking vitamins and it's needed for some other vitamin, but I'm using it up because I'm dosing really heavily on a certain vitamin, then I'd be worried about that. I'm trying to think of an example of this, but I can't. So I'll just leave it as general advice. Don't cycle off of anything that you think doesn't need it. For example, vitamin D does not appear to need to be cycled off in any way. You should do research on every specific chemical. If you're taking a multivitamin, that is the kind of one of the things that I do cycle off of because it's a multivitamin, so it has tons and tons of stuff in it, and of I don't know what. And I don't know much about multivitamins or how well they're balanced or how well they look at cofactors for absorption in them, but I just kind of like stick with my vitamin D, my probiotic, my vitamin D, which I take every day, no matter what. My vitamin C, which I take kind of like every other day, on and off, or not at all if I'm not sick some of the time. My probiotic, which I take in cycles, because I think that we don't understand enough about the gut flora and fauna to say that taking a probiotic all the time is a good thing, but certainly taking a probiotic some of the time is a great thing. And my fish oil, which I take every single day no matter what. So vitamin D and fish oil I take every single day. And then I have a multivitamin that I go on and off of. So that's what I do, and I do that because I just don't know. So this is a really weird answer to your question because it's basically a bunch of hearsay and no scientific backing on anything. So take it with a grain of salt and figure out your own answer, and hopefully my explanation of my own logic makes sense to you. If you are familiar with cofactors and absorption, then you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, you can search vitamin uptake cofactors, and you can kind of see the systems that we do know about already. Okay, that's the show for the day, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And please send in your questions to anchor.fm/WeldonGreen. And please come and follow my Twitch twitch.tv/mindgamesweldon. I'm trying to get partner. We're so close, you guys. I have every single thing checkmarked off the box except for 75 average concurrent viewers. So come join the show. Bye.